A very good morning to Madam Army and my fellow friends. I'm Danusha Manikavasan from Group 4 and my metric card number is 23DBT18F 2030. Our group has done a survey for our mini project on preferences of antibiotics instead of vaccines to treat infections among Nilai Polytechnic students. 50 students in total have answered this survey. So now I'll be presenting the objectives, introduction, students profile and data collected for question 1, 2 and 3. So let's start with the objectives. The objective of this survey is to identify the knowledge of Nilai Polytechnic students on antibiotics and vaccines. So basically, this survey was done to find out how well the students know about antibiotics and vaccines, as well as to know which one they prefer, either antibiotic or vaccines, and why they prefer that. The next one is the introduction. What are antibiotics and vaccines? Antibiotic is a medicine that helps to stop infections caused by bacteria, whereas vaccines are biological preparation to produce immune immunity to a specific disease or infection caused by virus. In short, antibiotics are for bacterial infections, whereas vaccines are for viral infections. Antibiotics usually work during time of disease, whereas vaccines are taken once and has permanent effect. Antibiotics are taken after we are infected, whereas vaccines are taken before we are infected. Now let's move on to the students profile. The students were asked for their gender and department to gather informations for students profile. So out of 50 respondents, 20 students were male and 30 students were female who answered this survey. And department, JAB stands for Jabatan Agrotechnology dan Bioindustry, JP stands for Jabatan Perdagangan, and JKM stands for Jabatan Kejuruteraan Mechanical. 21 students from JAB, 18 students from JP, and 11 students from JKM have answered this survey. So let's proceed to question number 1. This is a bar graph, and the title for this graph is Students' Gender versus Knowledge of Nilai Polytechnic Students on What Antibiotics and Vaccines Are. Here we have students' gender on x-axis and knowledge of Nilai Polytechnic students on what antibiotics and vaccines are on y-axis. The question that was asked on question number 1 is, do you know what antibiotics and vaccines are? And as you all can see, the blue colored bar represents the answer for yes, and the orange color bar represents the those who answered no. So male students who answered yes are 18 and male students who answered no are 2, and then 28 female students have answered yes and two female students have answered no.
I will be presenting question 2 and 3. So for question 2, it is asked the type of infections antibiotics treat. And as you can see, the data is presented in a bar chart. So on the x-axis, it is the students department, and on the y-axis, it is the knowledge of the Nilai Polytechnic students on the kind of infections antibiotics treat. And there's two answers that were given, which were bacterial infections and viral infections. In blue, and is bacterial infections, and in orange it is the viral infections. So for the JAB department, 5 students answered for bacterial infections and 16 students answered for viral infections. For the JP department, 10 students answered for bacterial infections and 8 students answered for viral infections. And lastly, for the JKM students, 4 students answered for bacterial infections and 7 students answered for the viral infections. As for question 3, the question asked was, what kind of infections do the vaccines treat? So the answers given were bacterial infections and viral infections. It is also in a bar chart form. So in the x-axis, it is the students department, and on the y-axis, it is the knowledge of the Polytechnic Nilai students on the kind of infections that vaccines treat. So for the JAB department, 18 students answered on bacterial infections and 3 students answered for viral infections. For the JP department, 14 students answered on bacterial infections and 4 students answered on viral infections. And lastly, 4 students answered for bacterial infection in JKM and 7 students answered for viral infections. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Nurul Juliana and my metric number is 2015. Today I want to continue explain the data for question 4, 5 and 6. Okay, the graph of question 4, the respondent of student gender about knowledge on importance of antibiotic. And for the respondent, we know that 19 of male have yes and 1 of male have no. Meanwhile, 13 of female have yes and 0 of female have no about knowledge how important of antibiotic. The question number 5 represented in bar graph. For the bar graph that we know how many student department of Polytechnic Nilai prefer antibiotic or vaccine. From this point, 12 of JAB prefer vaccine and 9 of JAB prefer antibiotic. Second, the student department of JKM have 4 prefer vaccine. Meanwhile, 7 of JKM prefer antibiotic. Last but not least, the student department of JP have 11 choose vaccine and 7 of JP choose antibiotic. The question number 6 represented in bar graph with a title the reason of Polytechnic student preferring antibiotic or vaccine. So why they choose between us? Because 41 number of student is prefer us for getting sick and 11 numbers of student is un and better recovering.
Hi guys, my name is Nur Izzuddin Roslan and my matrix number is 23 TBT 18F 2012. Okay, right now I'm going to tell you about knowledge of Polytechnic Nilai student that all children should be immune. Okay, the total of all respondents of all department is 50, and for the first department, JAB, we can see that most of them say yes that children should be immune and only one say no. The total of respondents in JAB is 21 and 20 say yes and 1 say no. Okay, for the next one, JKM, the total of respondents in JKM is 11 and 11 of them say yes, no one say no. And for the next department, JP, most of them say yes. The total of respondents of JP is 18 and all of them say yes. Okay, for the next one, we tell you about knowledge of Polytechnic Nilai student on why do all antibiotics need to be consumed in each period. Okay, for this question, there are 3 reasons. The first one is to avoid wastage of antibiotics, and the second one is taking antibiotics without following the prescribed dose will affect the ability to eliminate the germ. Okay, the third reason is the bacteria that are left over may more likely to develop resistance to the antibiotic in the long run. Okay, for the first one, which is to avoid wastage of antibiotic, you guys can see that 7 male and 10 female choose this reason. The total of respondents for this reason to avoid wastage of antibiotic is 17. Okay, for the next one, you guys can see that 11 male and 12 female are choosing this reason. Taking antibiotic without following the prescribed dose will affect the ability to eliminate the germ. Okay, for the last reason, you guys can see that only 2 male and 8 female are choose this reason. The total respondent in this reason is 10. Okay, for the next one, we're going to talk about knowledge of common antibiotic that Polytechnic Nilai student know. Okay, for this question, we have two options, whether amoxicillin or augmentin. Okay, you guys can see that we divided the graph following the department. The first one is JAB, the second one is JKM, and the third one is JB. The first one, department, JAB, the total of respondents that in JAB is 21. Okay, for the first one that choose amoxicillin, you guys can see that only 7 are choose in J. 7 are choose the amoxicillin, and most of them choose augmentin. You can see that 14 people that are choose augmentin. Okay, for the next department, JKM, you guys can see that only 6 are choose amoxicillin and 5 are choose augmentin. So the total respondent in JKM is 11. Okay, for the next one, JP, as you guys can see that only 7 people are choose amoxicillin and most of them choose augmentin. 11 people choose augmentin. So the total respondent in JP is 18.
Good evening, Madam Arnie, and my name is Denise. My matrix number is DBT 2005, and I will be presenting on the very last question, which is the student's gender versus the knowledge of common vaccine that the Polytechnic's Nilai students know. So if you see, it is presented in a bar chart, and on the x-axis, it is the student's gender, and on the y-axis, it's the knowledge of the common vaccine that the Polytechnic Nilai students know. The question asked for this bar chart is to state the common vaccine that the Polytechnic Nilai students know, and 2 answers were provided for them to choose, which is the inactivated polio vaccine and the Haemophilus influenza type B vaccine. If you look at the bar chart, the blue is known as the inactivated polio vaccine, and the orange is known as the Haemophilus influenza type B vaccine. So, if you look, 4 male have answered the inactivated polio vaccine, and 16 of them have answered the Haemophilus influenza type B vaccine. As for the female, 11 of them have answered inactivated polio vaccine, and 19 of them have answered the Haemophilus influenza type B vaccine. So, to conclude, the Nilai Polytechnic students prefer vaccines over antibiotics as it prevents us from getting sick and sparks immune responses, helping our body fight off and remember the germs so that it can attack if the germ ever invades again. Thank you.